On July 29, 2008, a mother of two named Susan Powell recorded a video where she documented the assets in her home in Utah, just in case, in her own words, something happened to her.
This is me, July 29th, 2008. It is 12:33 Mountain Time. Covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after, as much as that's possible.
The video was made on her attorney's advice, who feared that Susan's husband Josh might attempt to sell some of her most expensive assets. In the years leading up to the now infamous video recording, the couple's marriage had been under a lot of strain. And during the recording, Susan lets on that things had been everything but peaceful between her and Josh over the past few years.
This is all stuff bought in a year or less through Home Depot on my credit. Josh bought a lot of stuff and then he had to bankrupt it. And then he bought a little bit more on my credit. There's a nice lamp. These are things to roll wood with. And I had necklaces too. I don't know where those are. I just got in a rage, as you can see, and broke this. There's duds and pearls and opals in there. Broke this and threw all my DVDs and made a mess because he was angry at me. This was about a year or two back.
Susan had been seeing a divorce attorney to look into the possibility of leaving her husband. They were still living together in 2009, almost a year and a half after the video had been recorded. On the morning of December the 6th of that year, Susan went to church with her two boys, after which a neighbor went to visit her, leaving her house at about 5 p.m. That night, Josh allegedly took the couple's two boys, Charlie and Braden Powell, on a camping trip in the middle of the night in blizzard conditions to a campsite on the Pony Express Trail. According to Josh, Susan stayed home because she was tired. The story goes that the next day, Susan's family and friends reported her missing when her two boys weren't dropped off at daycare. When Josh came back from this supposed camping trip with his sons, he said that when he had left the previous evening, his wife had been sleeping peacefully at home, and that he had no idea what could have happened to her. After searching the couple's house in Utah, the police found no evidence of foul play, but things continued to get stranger as the investigation continued. Inside Susan's safe deposit box at the bank she worked, the cops found a handwritten will testament in which Susan alleged that Josh had taken out $1 million life insurance policy on her a few weeks prior. Disturbingly, she also wrote, "If I die, it might not be an accident," 10 days after she mysteriously disappeared. Authorities also found that Josh had filed paperwork to withdraw money from a retirement account, and he was officially declared as a person of interest in this case. Suspiciously, Susan's family and friends reported that during the search efforts, Josh had never seemed to show a genuine interest in finding her missing wife. But despite the mountain of evidence stacked against him, Josh Powell was never formally charged in the case of his wife's disappearance. During the investigation, the cops also questioned the couple's two sons, but it was hard to get any solid information out of them on account of their age, even though they had mentioned that Josh had taken Susan with them on their camping trip on the night of her disappearance. They also made outlandish claims, including allegations that they had arrived at the campsite by an airplane. This made it impossible to use their claims as evidence that Josh was responsible for his wife's disappearance. Shortly after, Josh and his two sons moved back to their home state of Washington, but the authorities soon determined that it wasn't safe for Braden and Charlie to be living with their father during the middle of the investigation. And Josh lost custody of his boys. This is where things get extremely disturbing. On February 5th, 2012, more than 2 years after Susan's disappearance, a state caseworker brought the two boys to Josh's house for what was supposed to be a supervised visit. Immediately upon their arrival, Josh locked the social worker out of the house and took the life of both of his children and himself by lighting the house on fire by gasoline. If his behavior during the initial stages of investigation was suspicious, the unspeakable crimes Josh committed on that date in 2012 were about as clear of an admission of guilt as you can get in a case like this. In the aftermath of this tragic incident, the cops started looking into Josh's brother and father, who they suspected knew more about the case than they were letting on, even though they had solid evidence to suggest that Michael, Josh's brother, had helped him conceal Susan's body. The case reached a dead end, and Michael also took his own life in 2013. More than a decade later, Susan's dad won a lawsuit against Washington State of nearly $100 million on the ground of negligence and failure to protect the two children, who were supposed to be under state's custody, a big chunk of which he gave to a charity to support domestic violence survivors. Almost 15 years after her disappearance and murder of her two children, people still gather in Susan's hometown of Puyallup, Washington every year to pay their respects and honor her memory. The last video Susan made documenting her assets received a lot more attention after everything had happened. With hindsight, the video was portrayed in a much more disturbing light. Susan saying things like, "I am recording this just in case anything happens," makes you wonder if she knew her husband could do something this horrible as she was filming. Over the years, Susan's father has been alerted of possible locations of where his daughter's remains might be buried, including abandoned mines in Utah and other isolated locations. Sadly, every lead has turned out to be a false alarm, and it's very unlikely that Susan's remains will ever be found. On the evening of August 8, 2013, 26-year-old Brandon arrived home in San Angelo, Texas, and had an argument with Ledessa. She later explained that the fight occurred partially because they were both stressed out due to Brandon working 60-plus-hour weeks and having 3 small children in the house. Another major factor in the argument was that Brandon hadn't come home the night before, and Ledessa believed this to be a sign that he was abusing drugs again. Brandon and Ledessa had a policy for how to handle disagreements between them. When things became too heated, they'd go to separate rooms, or one would leave the home, and they'd give each other a chance to cool off before approaching the topic again. Brandon called his father around 11:30 p.m., told him what had happened, and said that he wanted to come over to his house. Brad Lawson, who lived approximately 3 hours away in Crowley, Texas, tried to discourage his son from making the long drive, but Brandon insisted. Brandon Lawson left home in his silver Ford F-150 at 11:54 p.m. and would never return. Brandon ran out of gas during the drive to Crowley and had to pull over on Route 277 between San Angelo and Bronte, Texas in Coke County. He called his brother Kyle, who lived only a mile away from Brandon and Ledessa's home, and asked him to bring gas. While talking to Kyle, Brandon claimed that he was being chased by 3 men, whom he later described as Mexicans in the neighborhood. Kyle, dubious about the veracity of his story, asked him if he was on drugs and perhaps hallucinating, but Brandon denied this. At 12:50 a.m., Brandon called 911, and it was a very disturbing call.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. It's like we're just pushing guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. You got to take the to the woods. Please learn.
Okay, now run that by me.
When I talked to him, I surely ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
That's the first guy.
You need an ambulance?
Yes, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Some observers believe the noises indicated in the transcript were gunshots, while others think it was just vehicles crossing the bridge over the nearby river. The true source and nature of the sounds have remained a mystery. Kyle soon spoke to Ledessa on the phone and told her what was going on. She put a fuel container out for him to pick up and started to get ready for bed. Kyle was short on money at the time and couldn't afford to fill it up, so the plan was to pick up Brandon, drive him to a service station, and have him pay to fill the canister. They drove to the location and found Brandon's truck parked on the side of the road, but Brandon himself was nowhere to be found. A sheriff's deputy showed up a short time later after being contacted by a trucker who reported that Brandon's vehicle was parked just over the white line along the edge of the highway and was obstructing traffic. During a call, Brandon told Kyle, "I can see you, I'm right here." Yet neither Kyle nor the deputy could see him. When Brandon still hadn't shown up after several minutes, Kyle recently learned that there was an outstanding warrant for his arrest, related to drug charges issued in Johnson County back in 2005. However, as Brandon's later 911 call suggests, this was likely not the reason for his disappearance. Police searched with helicopters, thermal cameras, and a search party, but no trace of Brandon was found. Early in the investigation, police believed that Brandon left town of his own free will to start over elsewhere and dodge his arrest warrant. But his family never believed this. On February 4th, 2022, Brandon Lawson's family announced that a search party had found what they believed to be Brandon's clothing near his last known location. Shortly thereafter, the Texas Rangers conducted their own search of the area and discovered human remains. The DNA results are still pending, but his loved ones strongly believe that the remains belong to Brandon and that they're one step closer to learning what happened to him on that August night so many years ago. The disappearance of Brandon Lawson will always remain as one of the most disturbing mysteries of the decade. The case of Henry McCabe is one of the most chilling and hard to understand out of all the myriad cases of people dying under mysterious circumstances. Before Henry McCabe went missing, he was seemingly having a good night with friends at a local club in Minnesota. According to the Minnesota spokesman recorder, he had hung out with his friend William Kennedy all day, and his friend had dropped him off at a gas station when they were done partying. As a state auditor in Minnesota, by all accounts, he had a happy and successful life with his wife and 2 children, until he suddenly went missing on September 7th, 2015. That night, he left an eerie voicemail that seemed like a pocket dial on his wife's phone. In the voicemail, weird and almost animal-like noises can be heard, and what is allegedly Henry's voice claims to have been caught in a struggle and ultimately shot by an assailant. His wife was allegedly in California at the time, but contacted the police as well as private police investigators the next day. They turned up no leads. Henry McCabe's friend William Kennedy was never linked to the crime, though he was the one who dropped off Henry at the convenience store on the night he disappeared. Apparently, one of the distinguishable words on Henry's audio tape was Papus, which was William's nickname. Then there's the fact that he turned in McCabe's keys and wallet, but under the auspices that he took them the night he partied with McCabe because he was trying to prevent Henry from driving himself home. When William gave his statement to police, he initially described a gas station where there was no evidence of himself or Henry. He said that Henry immediately got back in the car after he was dropped at the gas station, so he was dropped at another gas station a few miles away. Later, an investigation of local electronic video surveillance at different stores confirmed it was another gas station location. Henry's wife, Corrine, was mystified as to why William would leave Henry at a gas station at 2 in the morning. Why would you not just drop him home? She said that those noises were extremely out of character for who he was. She also kept claiming that her husband was alive, even though she didn't have the evidence to support her sayings. A lot of perplexing and unsatisfying angles to McCabe's disappearance case were never investigated. On November 2nd, 2015, about 8 weeks after Henry McCabe disappeared, his body was found by a kayaker at Rush Lake, 6 miles from the gas station where his friend had dropped him off. Contrary to McCabe's voicemail message, there was nothing indicating that guns had been in play. There were no gunshot wounds on him at all. In fact, the medical examiner found no traces of any injuries, and the death was not viewed as suspicious. No cause of death was ever determined, and the case remains open. According to David Singleton of the Minnesota PD, McCabe's death is utterly perplexing. I don't believe the idea that he just wandered that far on his own, and the audio doesn't support the idea that his death is not suspicious, he shared with Star Tribune. Amber Tuccaro was a 20-year-old Canadian First Nations woman from Fort McMurray, Alberta. In August of 2012, she flew from Alberta to Edmonton International Airport and booked a hotel room with her 1-year-old son and a female friend for a short vacation. That night, she got excited about her trip and decided to hitchhike into the city by herself. After which, she was never seen again. When Amber didn't return to the hotel the next day, her friend called her mother, who immediately called the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and soon after, Amber was declared a missing person. The authorities dug into her phone records and found out that she had received a phone call while she was in the company of an unidentified man. The recording is very unsettling, especially since it marked the last time she was ever heard alive.
Where are we by?
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont.
We're heading north of Beaumont. Yo, where are we going? No, this is a... Are you kidding me? You better not take me anywhere I don't want to go. I want to go into the city. Jeez. Yo, we're not going into the city, are we?
We're going.
No, we're not.
Yes.
Then where are these roads going to?
50th Street.
50th Street. Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Yo, where are we going?
50th Street.
50th Street?
50th Street.
East, right?
East.
Over now.
Travel.
In the recording, a male driver can be heard reassuring Amber that they are heading where she wants to go, but she doesn't seem to be buying the story and is obviously pretty distressed. On August 28th, the cops released the phone conversation, but they didn't officially start investigating the disappearance well after a month Amber was reported missing. Sadly, when Amber's mother pressured the cops to do something and find her daughter, they dismissed her and said that Amber was probably out partying and would turn up soon. Tragically, on September 1st, 2012, just 4 days after the audio of the eerie conversation was released, the remains of Amber's body were found on a rural property near Leduc County by a group of horseback riders. One of the most frustrating aspects of Amber's case is how unprofessionally the disappearance was handled by the Canadian police. After just 1 month of searching, Amber was taken off the missing persons list, based on a series of suspicious unconfirmed and anonymous sightings in Edmonton. And it took her mother an entire month to get her back on the list. By the time she was put back on the list by the negligent cops who made the unforgivable mistake, her property, which could have been used as evidence, had already been accidentally destroyed after it was recovered from the hotel. Over the years, a few women have come forward claiming to know the identity of the man in the recording, with all of them accusing the same man. The authorities say they have looked into him, but he wasn't declared as the person of interest. A few years ago, another man came forward claiming that the man in the recording was his father, an American citizen who had no legal standing in Canada who had been living on a ranch in the greater Edmonton area. If the man's testimony is to be believed, his father is also responsible for several other mysterious disappearances and deaths that have taken place in the area over the last few years. One of the most disturbing aspects in the recording is the audible dishonesty in the man's voice, which is pretty much clear as day when Amber asks him if he's sure that they're going into the city, and he responds with an extremely fake, "Absolutely." It's also pretty messed up on how the cops handled the case from start to finish, and many people suspect that the cause of unprofessional management of the case was just straight-up racism against the Indigenous woman. Hopefully, we'll someday have an explanation on what happened that night to Amber Tuccaro. On November 10, 2014, A 47-year-old solo hiker and YouTuber named Kenny Veach disappeared while hiking in the Mojave Desert, and he hasn't been seen since. In June 2014, Kenny Veach took to the comments section of a video titled "Son of an Area 51 Technician" to relay a chilling story. The comment read, "This ain't nothing. I'm a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly, I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." After Kenny Veach posted about his chilling MCcabe experience, a number of YouTube users responded with interest, encouraging him to return to the cave, document the hike, and provide evidence of his strange discovery. So in October 2014, armed with a 9mm handgun, Kenny Veach attempted to find the MCcabe again.
Well, here I am on my hike up here in the mountains north of Las Vegas. This is a canyon I just walked up in. Now you can't tell, but my truck is way out there by the mountains at the very, very end of this valley. It's kind of like a big canyon.
However, in a video titled "MCcabe Hike" posted on October 18th, he admitted that he was unable to relocate the site.
So I take photographs of cool stuff. I find fossils and all kinds of stuff. So that's where I came from, way back over there. I had to drop down off of that mountain. And now I got a ways to go down here. So I'm going to turn this off, and if I find the cave, I'll be turning it back on. Bye-bye.
Disappointed YouTube users flooded the comments section, criticizing Veach for not proving his original claim. Many of them pushed Veach to go on another journey to find the MCcabe. But one comment in particular stood out. "No, do not go back there," the user wrote. "If you find that cave entrance, don't go in. You won't get out." Veach replied to it by saying, "What makes you say that?" And he never got a reply from that person. On November 10th, Kenny Veach embarked once again on a desert hike to the Sheep Mountains, telling his loved ones he planned to return the next day. He never did. When Kenny Veach didn't return from his overnight hike, his girlfriend, Sharian Pilgrim, reported him missing. In November 2014, the search for Veach began. In the days following his disappearance, search and rescue teams explored an abandoned vertical mine shaft that had been featured in one of Veach's recent videos. There, they found the missing hiker's cell phone. His vehicle was discovered several miles away. The trail had gone cold. Then, a user introducing herself as Veach's girlfriend, Sharian Pilgrim, left a comment on his MCcabe hike video. She explained that Veach had struggled with his mental health for years and may have ventured into the desert that day with the intention of dying by suicide. Had Kenny Veach died by suicide, or was something else at play? This will always remain a mystery. That is the end of the video. Please like and subscribe so we can reach our 10K subscribers goal by the end of the year. And comment down below if you want to see more videos like this. We will see you in the next one.